Hello, everyone. It is a magnificent day to sit down and unravel the absolute chaos brewing in our favorite fictional town. Grab your notebooks, because we have a lot of ground to cover today. Did Ava honestly think she could just pack her bags, chase after a ghost like Ethan, and not stumble headfirst into the most dangerous international conspiracy this town has ever seen? Are we really supposed to believe that a woman with her history of manipulation is just going to let him vanish without a trace? If you ask me, her decision to leave town is not just a desperate search for a former lover, it is a calculated march into a deadly trap. We are looking at a shattered trust situation here, and her mind is working in overdrive. Ava is walking into a labyrinth of lies, and the writers are severely testing our sanity if they expect us to think this ends with a simple, happy reunion. There's a much darker game being played behind the scenes, and she is walking right into the center of the board. If you look closely at the current landscape of the show, you will see that we are staring at a dangerous, gridlocked stalemate. Ava is cornered by her own insatiable need for control and answers. She has never been the type of woman to accept abandonment gracefully. When Ethan rushed out of town due to the sudden arrival of Hudson, he left behind a massive trail of unanswered questions. For Ava, this disappearance is an unacceptable loose end. Her psychological motive for leaving is rooted in her absolute refusal to be played for a fool. She wants the truth about his sudden exit, and she is willing to cross oceans to get it. However, this is where the deadlock becomes deadly. By stepping out of her comfort zone and venturing into international territory, she is stripping away her usual protections. She is entering a world where her local leverage means nothing, setting the stage for a truly unforeseen fallout. Now, let us analyze the man she is chasing. Ethan did not just leave for a vacation. He fled because his past came back to haunt him in the form of a mysterious corporate executive. If you ask me, Ethan is operating on pure survival instinct right now. He has an ulterior motive for staying hidden, likely tied to deep, dark secrets involving international crime syndicates or perhaps even the WSB. Ethan knows the underground networks better than anyone, and he is a master of evasion. But even the best runners eventually hit a wall. Ava tracking him down is not going to be a romantic reunion. It is going to be a collision of two highly manipulative forces. I firmly believe that when she finally catches up to him, the shattered trust between them will make any immediate cooperation incredibly difficult. Yet, they will have no choice but to rely on each other because a third, entirely unexpected player is about to enter the board. This brings us to the most shocking piece of this speculative puzzle, Cassius. As far as the residents of town are concerned, Cassius is a dead man. Everyone, including his devastated mother Liesel and his sister Britt, believes he is gone forever after his disastrous impersonation scheme. But if you ask me, guys, his supposed death is nothing more than a highly orchestrated illusion. I strongly suspect that Cassius is very much alive, but he is in grave danger. It looks like he is no longer the loyal operative he once was. Could it be that he discovered the dark, twisted truths of the WSB and decided he could no longer be a pawn in their deadly games? By defecting, Cassius would immediately become the most hunted man in the espionage world. He is a man without a country, running from the very organization that trained him. So, how do these three disparate paths collide? Imagine a scenario where Ava, relentlessly following the breadcrumbs left by Ethan, accidentally stumbles into the crosshairs of a WSB manhunt. Instead of finding Ethan right away, she finds a wounded, desperate Cassius. So, this is where Ava's brilliance truly shines. A lesser character would run away, but Ava sees opportunity in chaos. Helping Cassius evade his WSB pursuers would not be an act of charity, it would be a highly calculated move. By saving his life, she binds him to her. She gains a lethal, highly trained operative who owes her his life. This implies that Ava is building her own private army, starting with a ghost. The psychological motive here is clear. She needs a shield, and Cassius needs a savior. It is a match made in manipulative heaven. Let us break this down into two distinct possibilities. In scenario A, it looks like Ava rescues Cassius entirely on her own before she ever locates Ethan. In this version of events, Cassius becomes her secret weapon in the search for her former lover. Cassius possesses intimate knowledge of global surveillance, hidden safe houses, and encrypted communications. With his WSB expertise, tracking down a rogue like Ethan becomes significantly easier. However, this scenario creates a fascinating dynamic between Ava and Cassius. They are both survivors, but they operate on completely different moral compasses. Could it be that during their time on the run, they develop a profound, unspoken bond? They are both outcasts, misunderstood by their families, and haunted by their past sin. This shared trauma could forge an unbreakable loyalty between them. Continue with Scenario A. The moment they finally corner Ethan, the power dynamic shifts dramatically. Ethan would be expecting a furious Ava, but finding her flanked by a supposedly dead WSB agent would throw him completely off balance. The shattered trust between Ava and Ethan would have to be addressed immediately. Ethan would have to explain his ulterior motive for fleeing, and he would have to prove his worth to this newly formed duo. I suspect Ava would not forgive him easily. She would demand absolute transparency, forcing Ethan to lay all his cards on the table regarding Hudson and the threats he is running from. This implies that Ava would firmly position herself as the undisputed leader of this trio, holding the reins of both a master thief and a rogue spy. Now, let us flip the board and look at Scenario B. What if Ava manages to track down Ethan first? In this timeline, it looks like Ava and Ethan have a fiery, volatile reunion where they hash out their differences and reluctantly agree to work together to eliminate the threat of Hudson. As they navigate the dangerous European underground, they inadvertently cross paths with a fleeing Cassius. Could it be that Ethan's criminal underworld connections intersect with the WSB's black market operations, leading them straight to Cassius? In Scenario B, Cassius is the wild card that disrupts their fragile alliance. Ethan might view Cassius as a massive liability, a heat score that will bring the entire weight of the WSB down on their heads. Ava, however, would see the strategic value in keeping the rogue agent alive. This implies that Scenario B would be fraught with intense internal conflict. Ethan and Cassius are natural enemies, the elusive rogue and the trained government operative. Ava would have to play the role of the ultimate mediator, using her psychological motive to manipulate both men into cooperating. She would have to convince Ethan that Cassius's insider knowledge of the WSB is exactly what they need to survive, while simultaneously assuring Cassius that Ethan's underground network is his only ticket to freedom. The unforeseen fallout of this forced collaboration could be explosive. If you ask me, the tension between Ethan and Cassius would be palpable, with Ava constantly pulling the strings to ensure they do not kill each other before their enemies do. Regardless of whether Scenario A or Scenario B plays out, I do not believe for a second that this trio will immediately rush back to town. Why would they? Returning empty-handed and vulnerable would be a fatal mistake. If you ask me, they will realize that their combined skills make them an unstoppable force, but they need time to consolidate their power. They will use this time in exile to gather leverage, dig up dirt, and prepare for a triumphant, earth-shattering return. Cassius needs to ensure the WSB cannot touch him, Ethan needs to neutralize the threat of Hudson, and Ava needs to guarantee that when she walks back into town, no one, not even Sonny, can dictate terms to her ever again. This calculated move to delay their return builds immense anticipation and allows them to transition from prey to predators. When you look at the sheer potential of this alliance, it is genuinely terrifying. And this is not just a temporary partnership, it is a trifecta of unparalleled power and dangerous secrets. Ava possesses a deep, intimate understanding of the power players in town. She knows where the bodies are buried. Ethan brings a vast network of international criminal contacts and an unmatched ability to acquire whatever is needed, no matter how illegal. And Cassius? Cassius is the crown jewel. He holds the classified, highly sensitive secrets of the WSB. He knows about the black ops, the cover-ups, and the cold fusion data. If you ask me, combining these three elements creates an alliance that could literally topple empires. They would have the leverage to blackmail governments, dismantle mob territories, and rewrite the rules of the game. We also cannot ignore the massive emotional unforeseen fallout that will occur when this trio finally steps foot back in town. Think about Liesel and Britt. They have been mourning Cassius, believing him to be dead after his twin impersonation scheme fell apart. The psychological motive behind Cassius staying away is likely rooted in his desire to protect them from the WSB's wrath. But when he returns, standing shoulder to shoulder with Ava and Ethan, the shockwaves will be monumental. Liesel is a fierce, unpredictable woman, and Britt has just managed to clear her name and start fresh. Will they embrace Cassius, or will the shattered trust of his fake death create a permanent rift? I suspect it will be a highly emotional, volatile reunion, with Ava standing by as the orchestrator of this miraculous return. Furthermore, imagine the reaction of the established power brokers in town. Sonny is used to being the undisputed king, but how can he possibly control an alliance that holds international government secrets? He cannot. Ava returning with Ethan and Cassius by her side is a direct challenge to the existing hierarchy. It looks like they will no longer be on the defensive, reacting to the threats of others. Instead, they will be the ones calling the shots. If someone tries to threaten Ava, Cassius could casually leak a classified WSB file that ruins their life. If someone tries to muscle Ethan, Ava could leverage her local connections to destroy their business. This implies a complete paradigm shift. They are transforming from individual targets into a unified, impenetrable fortress of manipulation and intelligence. Ultimately, guys, we have to ask ourselves how this grand narrative will actually conclude. While the idea of this unstoppable alliance is thrilling, we all know that in the soap opera world, no empire lasts forever. My personal deduction is that their massive cache of secrets will eventually become their undoing. You cannot hold that much explosive leverage without someone eventually lighting a match. Will Ava's insatiable ambition push Cassius too far? Will Ethan's ulterior motive ultimately cause him to betray them both for a massive payout? I strongly suspect that while they will return as conquering heroes, the internal paranoia and shattered trust will slowly poison their alliance from the inside out. But until that inevitable collapse happens, we are in for the most brilliant, high-stakes game of chess this show has delivered in years.